Do you know that panic when someone blocks your escape during a fire? That's exactly how I felt when I caught Karen from the HOA secretly charging her Tesla from my outdoor outlet. The reason my power bill jumped $300 a month. Don't scroll yet, because the way my smart power system turned her $90,000 car into a dead battery is deeply satisfying. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and yes, I know some of you are working right now. Your secret's safe. Trust me, this story's worth it. Before diving in, some context. They say good fences make good neighbors, but even the best fence can't stop entitled people who think rules apply to everyone but them. Growing up in a blue-collar Midwest town taught me to respect others' property, a concept apparently lost on certain Tesla-driving suburban royalty with designer shades and a habit of freeloading. This isn't just a story about power theft, it's a lesson in consequences, one I'm still proud of. As my granddad used to say, the best teacher for a thief isn't the police, it's the trap they didn't see coming. When Deborah Harrington moved in next door with her sparkling white Model X, I had no idea she'd become my personal nightmare. I'm Ethan Bailey, 35, an electrical engineer in Seattle, former Army Corps of Engineers specialist in power grids and security systems. 6 years in uniform taught me discipline, precision, and how to handle problems, skills that came in handy for suburban combat. I've lived in Pinewood Estates for 3 years now, quiet streets, trimmed lawns, summer barbecues, and mostly decent neighbors. Or at least, that's how it was before Hurricane Deborah arrived. Looking back, I should have guessed something was off when the previous owners of her place sold below market just to leave fast. Now I know why. I met Deborah with a welcome basket, craft beer, chocolates, and community info. Not my thing, but I was raised with manners. How thoughtful, she said with a tight smile that didn't touch her eyes. She wore the suburban armor, designer yoga pants, a cashmere sweater, and enough jewelry to trip a metal detector. Her tour of the house was more brag reel than visit. Every sentence included words like premium and exclusive. This island's imported Italian marble, she said, stroking a countertop bigger than my kitchen. My husband William, he's a corporate attorney, insisted only the best for our forever home. She mentioned his success 3 more times before we were done. When she asked about my quaint little house, she made quaint sound like pitiful. And when she found out I was an engineer, her interest vanished. If you weren't a doctor or lawyer, you didn't exist in Deborah's world. That first meeting should have been my warning. Within weeks, she'd infiltrated the HOA like it was a hostile takeover, all charm, manipulation, and fine wine. She flattered, threatened, and bribed her way into power, hosting over-the-top dinners filled with gossip and name-dropping. 6 weeks in, she was HOA vice president. Dorothy, the longtime VP, resigned suddenly. Later I heard Deborah had blackmailed her over her son's old DUI. Meanwhile, I stayed out of HOA drama, buried in remote projects and late-night gaming. My job designing power systems for buildings kept me busy, and neighborhood politics sounded like torture. My motto was simple: pay dues, follow rules, mind my business. If only Deborah had done the same. A month after Deborah moved in, my electric bill arrived, and nearly knocked the wind out of me. $450. Triple my usual amount. I figured it had to be a mistake, but the power company confirmed the reading. Maybe a bad appliance? I checked everything, even used a power monitor on every major device. Nothing explained the spike. Then my other neighbors, the Andersons, mentioned their bill hadn't changed. Whatever was eating power was only happening on my property. A week later, my security system sent a 2 a.m. alert. Half asleep, I checked my phone, and there she was. Deborah, in designer pajamas and a silk robe, sneaking through my backyard with an extension cord. She plugged it into my outdoor outlet, the one I used for yard tools, then snaked the cord through the shrubs she had suggested for aesthetic improvements. The other end ran neatly into her Tesla parked by the fence. I watched her scurry away, satisfied, like some luxury brand power thief. The next morning, I showed up at her door, phone in hand. "Deborah, we need to talk about you charging your Tesla from my outlet." Her smile didn't even flicker. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Ethan," she said, laughing lightly. I played the footage. Her expression hardened instantly. "That could be anyone," she lied, even though the video clearly showed her face. Then she added, "All sugar and venom. If your system's that inefficient, maybe you should upgrade. We all care about maintaining property values here." Before shutting the door, she delivered the final jab. "By the way, your hedges are 2 inches over regulation height. As HOA vice president, I'll have to note that." I walked home knowing this was just the start, and that Deborah wasn't your average HOA Karen. After that, I took precautions. Installed more cameras, locked my outdoor outlets. Problem solved, or so I thought. 2 days later, I got an HOA violation notice for unauthorized exterior modifications. Apparently, the outlet lockboxes broke community rules. The letter was signed by Gregory Palmer, the HOA inspector, Deborah's latest pawn. He showed up the next day, clipboard in hand, chest puffed out. "Mr. Bailey, I'm here to ensure compliance with your removal notice." I tried explaining, even showed him the video. He barely blinked. "That's a private dispute between neighbors," he said. "But unapproved lockboxes fall under HOA jurisdiction." Under his watchful eye, and the smell of expensive cologne, I removed them. Later, a neighbor mentioned Deborah had been hosting appreciation nights for board members, complete with top-shelf scotch and flattery. That weekend, I finally attended my first HOA meeting. About 30 residents crammed into folding chairs. When the floor opened for concerns, I raised my hand. "I'd like to address unauthorized use of private electricity." "Point of order," Deborah interrupted smoothly. "Personal disputes aren't appropriate for open meetings. They must be submitted in writing." Frank, the perpetually dazed HOA president, nodded. Yes. Procedure must be followed." I sat down, biting back frustration, while Deborah flashed me a smug smile. Then came the kicker. "Next agenda item," Frank said. "Proposal for installation of community charging stations." Deborah stood up with a glossy folder. "As we all know, green energy is the future," she began, all charm. "I propose 4 charging stations near the community center. This will raise property values and show Pinewood's commitment to sustainability." What she didn't mention was that one community charger would be right next to her house, conveniently close to my property line. After the meeting, I stayed behind to skim the proposal files, and what I found made my blood boil. The electricity costs for those new charging stations would be billed to the HOA, split evenly among residents. Deborah had basically figured out how to make the entire neighborhood pay to charge her Tesla. Looking at the installation maps, it hit me. This wasn't just her scamming me anymore. She was turning all of Pinewood Estates into her personal power source, and nobody even knew it. I spent the next few weeks digging into HOA laws, electrical codes, and local ordinances. If I was going to fight her, I needed to know the rulebook better than she did. My Army engineering background came in handy. In any battle, intel matters as much as firepower. That's when I met Martha Wilson, a sharp-tongued, sharp-eyed widow who'd lived here since the neighborhood was built. "That Harrington woman's got half the board eating out of her hand," she said, sliding a binder across her kitchen table. Martha had been keeping notes on HOA meetings for years and knew all the dirt. "Gregory's not evil," she added, "just weak. His wife ran off with her yoga instructor years ago. And Frank, he's just coasting till he can retire to Florida." Through Martha, I met Brian and Sarah Thompson, a kind couple in their 40s with 2 kids. He was a teacher, she was a nurse, and they were barely managing the rising HOA fees. "If they raise dues again," Sarah sighed, "we'll have to pull Tommy out of baseball." Their son was in the living room, showing my security footage to his sister, laughing at the lady stealing power. With their help, I built my case. I installed a monitoring device on my electrical panel to record Deborah's nightly usage, around 75 kilowatt-hours a night, not pocket change. Brian and Sarah gathered signatures from other concerned homeowners, while Martha dug up HOA bylaws that backed us up. By the next meeting, I had everything: video proof, data charts, signatures from 23 households, and a clear case against Deborah's plan. I actually felt ready to win. Then, the night before the meeting, Martha called. "Ethan, they've postponed it. Something's fishy. They said the projector's broken, but Deborah's car's parked outside Frank's house right now." The next day, I saw her whispering to board members at the mailbox, smiling like a queen addressing her court. That's when it hit me: You can't win a rigged game by following the rules. Maybe it was time to play a different kind of game. So I decided to give her one last chance before escalating. I walked over the next morning, armed with neatly organized evidence, videos, charts, cost breakdowns. Their house had somehow become even more extravagant. Imported maples, hand-carved double doors, the works. Her husband William answered, tall, tanned, and clearly expensive. Even on a Saturday, he was dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. "Deborah's at Pilates," he said, glancing at his Rolex. "Can this wait?" "It really can't," I said, holding out the folder. He sighed, skimmed the photos with the disinterest of a man reading a fast food receipt. "I'm sure this is a misunderstanding," he said. "It's just a little electricity, not worth getting worked up over." His tone made it clear, what was hundreds of dollars to me was pocket change to him. Before I could explain the principle behind it, he checked his phone. "Call with Tokyo in 5, he muttered. "You two figure it out like adults." And just like that, he walked off, shutting the door in my face. That's when I realized both Harringtons had the same disease, total blindness to anything that didn't serve their own convenience. That afternoon, Deborah came stomping across the lawn. That afternoon, Deborah stormed across our lawns, designer sunglasses pushed into her perfectly highlighted hair. "How dare you go behind my back to William?" she hissed, careful to keep her voice low so the neighbors wouldn't hear. I stayed calm, explaining again that she needed to stop stealing my electricity and that I'd oppose her charging station proposal at the next HOA meeting. Her face darkened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she said, her tone dropping to a cold whisper. "William's one of the top corporate attorneys in the state. One word from him, and your remote job could vanish. Maybe I'll even mention your military background. People might not see it as so heroic." The message was clear: back off, or she'd ruin me. Over the next few days, I started noticing the shift. Neighbors who once waved now avoided eye contact. At the grocery store, people suddenly had somewhere else to be. The reason became clear when Brian called to cancel our meeting. "Hey man, I'm sorry," he said awkwardly. "There's a rumor going around that you've been unstable since your service. They're saying you're obsessed with Deborah. That you installed cameras to spy on her." I was speechless. Deborah had flipped the story completely, turning my security setup into her weapon. "Sarah and I know it's garbage," Brian added quickly, "but people are nervous." I tried holding a small meeting at my house, but only Martha and the Thompsons showed up. Everyone else sent polite excuses. Martha brought more bad news. She convinced the board to approve enhanced landscaping near your property line, she said grimly. Daily noise starting at 7 a.m., even weekends. And since it benefits your area, they're billing it as a special assessment to you. That night, sitting alone in my garage workshop, I knew I needed a new approach. As a military-trained electrical engineer, I had tools to protect my property, legally. So I designed a smart power protection system, a legitimate industrial device that detects unauthorized power use. It could sense unusual draw patterns, shut down automatically, and issue progressive warnings before disconnecting. Perfectly safe, perfectly compliant. 4 days, I assembled and tested the unit. No shortcuts. Industrial-grade materials, weatherproof housing, voltage monitors, and a backup battery. It even logged every fluctuation with time-stamped data. I wasn't building a trap. I was building proof. By the third evening, it was ready. I installed it behind my property, exactly where Deborah liked to plug in. A clear, professional sign read, "Protected by SPS. Authorized use only. Unauthorized use may damage connected devices." The warning symbols glowed softly under a small LED. Impossible to miss. I photographed everything: signs, connections, grounding, just in case. Even double-checked the setup with a city inspector friend. The system met every safety and code requirement. It couldn't harm anyone or property unless someone deliberately ignored the warnings and forced the connection. As I ran final diagnostics, LEDs blinking in sequence, I couldn't help but smile. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Or as we used to say in the Army, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The next morning, Deborah noticed the setup during her daily inspection walk. She stopped, squinted at the sign, and rolled her eyes. That evening, I found another HOA violation notice in my mailbox. Unauthorized signage. Of course, since the warning sign was a required safety notice under county code, it couldn't legally be removed. I filed the proper documentation citing the regulations, and for once, even Gregory couldn't argue with the law. For several days, my cameras caught Deborah eyeing the outlet but not touching it. Maybe the warning worked. Martha, though, kept tabs on her movements. She's testing outlets near the clubhouse now, she reported. Too weak for fast charging, and too far from home. It felt like a small victory until I learned the HOA had approved emergency funding to upgrade electrical infrastructure, bypassing resident votes under the excuse of safety improvements. Within a week, workers installed new high-capacity outlets along the common area bordering both our properties. Exactly as Deborah had planned. That night, my security system pinged. Deborah had returned, smugly plugging in her Tesla and waving at my camera before walking off. The SPS immediately logged massive off-peak power draws, costs that would now be shared across all residents. I quietly expanded my SPS to monitor those new community outlets, not control them, just record data. The logs confirmed Deborah charged nightly between 1 and 4 a.m., pulling full current the entire time. Her usage alone added roughly $500 a month to the HOA's electricity bill. Meanwhile, the HOA kept up its petty harassment. Violation notices piled up, mailbox too low, garage door fading, garbage cans visible too long. I complied with every rule while documenting everything. Slowly, my small circle of supporters grew. Martha and the Thompsons began sharing data with trusted neighbors, building quiet momentum. Through Martha's contacts, I learned Deborah's next move. She planned to propose an official Tesla supercharger at the community center. $25,000 in installation costs, billed to every homeowner. The vote was set for the rescheduled HOA meeting in 2 weeks. While reviewing SPS data one evening, I noticed something telling. Whenever Deborah charged her car, she bypassed the Tesla's built-in gradual ramp-up and went straight to maximum power. Dangerous and unnecessary. The SPS recognized this as abnormal and triggered standard safety warnings before engaging any protection measures. I left those protocols untouched. They were standard industrial safeguards, but made sure all alerts were clearly visible and audible. The night before the meeting, at exactly 1 a.m., the cameras pinged again. Deborah, right on schedule, connected her Tesla to the community outlet. The SPS detected the surge and issued its first warning, a flashing yellow light and low beeping. Instead of disconnecting, she smirked at the light and increased the charge rate. After 3 ignored warnings, the system followed its programming. It created a controlled voltage fluctuation, then cut power completely. I checked the diagnostics. Everything had functioned perfectly. She had overridden every safety cue. A few moments later, the camera caught her frozen beside her car, eyes wide at the error message on her Tesla screen. Now she understood, this wasn't a bluff. The next morning, furious pounding rattled my door. Deborah stood outside in silk pajamas, face flushed with rage. "Open this door right now, you vindictive little man!" she shouted for the entire neighborhood to hear. I opened it calmly, coffee in hand. "Good morning, Deborah. Something wrong?" "You destroyed my car," she yelled. "My Tesla's bricked, dead. Diagnostics say a power surge fried the system. You did this." Neighbors were gathering, watching. I kept my voice even. I installed a standard smart power protection system with posted safety warnings. "Were you using community power at 1 a.m.? Realizing the audience, her voice dropped to a hiss. "You sabotaged my car. It'll cost $22,000 to fix. William's calling our lawyer." "I'll be glad to speak with him," I said, handing her the SPS documentation. "It's fully certified and designed to prevent hazardous conditions. You ignored visible and audible warnings and increased power draw anyway." I pointed to the camera above the porch. "I have footage of that, including the warning sequence." 20 minutes later, William pulled up in his Mercedes. William approached, phone still in hand, irritation written all over his face. "Ethan," he said curtly, Deborah tells me you've damaged our Tesla with some kind of homemade electrical trap. Without a word, I handed him the SPS documentation. Unlike his wife, William actually read it. His frown deepened as he flipped through the pages. It says here the system gives multiple warnings before any shutdown, he noted, glancing at Deborah. Did you see any of those? Deborah stammered something about some blinking lights, but William was already focused on the text. When I offered to show him the footage, he raised a hand. Not necessary yet. I decided to be direct. William, your wife's been stealing electricity, from me and now from the community, for months. I have full documentation, videos, power logs, and proof she influenced the HOA to fund those outlets for her personal use. That's misuse of HOA funds, which can easily fall under fraud when a board member benefits directly. William's composure faltered. He turned to Deborah, who suddenly looked unsure. We'll discuss this privately, he said tightly. As they walked away, I heard him mutter, $22,000? Are you serious? And with HOA money? That afternoon, a tow truck hauled away Deborah's Tesla. The diagnostic confirmed extensive battery system damage, $22,000 in repairs, not covered by warranty. The report listed the cause as improper charging and ignored safety warnings. As the truck pulled off, Deborah turned on me, eyes blazing. You haven't won yet, Ethan. The HOA will back me. I smiled. We'll see. I've just requested a special HOA meeting. I think everyone deserves to know who's been paying your power bill. The meeting drew record attendance. The clubhouse was packed, neighbors shoulder to shoulder, murmuring anxiously. Every household seemed represented. I arrived early to set up, finding Martha already there, arranging a stack of annotated financial records. Just some light reading, she said with a wink. It was 6 months of HOA spending tied neatly to Deborah's projects. Frank, the HOA president, looked pale as he opened the session. His hands trembled as he adjusted his glasses, clearly dreading what was coming. Deborah sat front row, arms crossed, designer outfit gleaming, but William was nowhere to be seen, apparently traveling for work. Mr. Bailey has requested time to address a community concern, Frank stammered. The room fell silent. I connected my laptop to the projector, calm and steady. Years of military briefings had prepared me for moments like this. From across the room, Brian and Sarah Thompson gave me an encouraging nod. I began the presentation, security footage, power logs, and consumption charts. For the past 6 months, I said evenly, the Harrington home has used roughly 75 kilowatt-hours of community power per night, about $500 a month added to everyone's HOA fees. Gasps spread as graphs appeared on the screen, showing fee increases matching Deborah's charging times. The emergency infrastructure upgrade, I continued, was pushed through without a resident vote and primarily served one household. I outlined how the SPS worked, certified, standard, and equipped with multiple visible and audible warnings. Then I showed the video, Deborah ignoring the lights and deliberately increasing the power draw. Deborah shot to her feet. This is harassment. He's been spying on me for months. Her voice cracked as she glanced at the crowd. You can't show unauthorized recordings, but the room wasn't on her side anymore. Brian Thompson stood. My family's been struggling to cover these HOA hikes. We had to pull our son from baseball. Are you telling us we've been paying for your Tesla? More voices rose, seniors on fixed incomes, young couples, frustrated homeowners. The anger was real, directed entirely at her. Gregory Palmer, the HOA inspector who once gleefully cited me for minor violations, now sat silent, eyes fixed on his clipboard. William was still away on business. Frank tried to restore order, but the room had already made up its mind. Martha Wilson cut through the noise with her firm voice. I move for an immediate vote, full restitution of all misused funds, removal of Deborah Harrington, and a new election. A dozen voices seconded at once. The results weren't close. Deborah owed $7,000, was removed from the HOA board immediately, and a special election was set for the next month. Brian Thompson ran for president, promising transparency and fairness. Pinewood Estates changed almost overnight. Deborah and William listed their house within 2 weeks, well below market value. Word spread, thanks to Martha's network, that they were moving out of state to a gated community where electricity theft would be harder. On moving day, no one came to help, except Martha, sitting across the street, knitting and raising her teacup in mock farewell. Gregory resigned as inspector, too embarrassed to face anyone. Frank retired early to Florida. The new board overhauled the HOA's finances, installing transparent accounting and electric vehicle chargers with individual meters, a system I helped design. Within months, more residents bought EVs, confident their power use was fair and open. I declined a seat on the board but agreed to act as technical advisor, happy to contribute without debating paint colors or mailbox rules. The neighborhood found its rhythm again. Sarah led a real community watch, Martha started a garden, and families began connecting instead of complaining. The house next door sold to a kind young couple, respectful, friendly, and thoughtful enough to ask before adding a small fountain the new board gladly approved. Every time I pass the spot where Deborah once parked her Tesla, I smile at the new charging station with its transparent meter. The irony's perfect. She could have had all this if she'd just played fair. Instead, she paid tens of thousands in losses and left behind a stronger, more united community. As Martha told me with a grin, karma doesn't need Wi-Fi. She's right. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. It sometimes hums quietly through a well-engineered circuit.